You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Yeah, my post-nasal drip is clearing up. That was a good hello. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Lee Jacob Valk, and you're not. When I left you yesterday, I fully expected to come on this show and talk about Red Sox Yankees. I was going to break down the game, tell you how it impacted both teams going forward. I was really looking forward to watching that game yesterday. Obviously, that didn't happen. The game was postponed yesterday because the Yankees have a COVID outbreak. 6 players, Aaron Judge, Gio Urshela, Kyle Higashioka, Jonathan Loaisiga, Nestor Cortez, and Wandy Peralta, will all go on the COVID IL. Somehow, some way, that's where the outbreak stopped, with just those 6 players. So at this very moment, tonight's game is a go. The weekend games are a go. The Yankees got kinda lucky here. This outbreak could have affected the whole team. Remember what happened with the Vancouver Canucks a few months ago? They had a big COVID outbreak, affected the whole team. Their season was paused for a month. It's kind of ironic. The Yankees and Red Sox didn't like that they weren't going to get the full benefit of the All-Star break because they were the only team set to play yesterday. They actually ended up getting the full benefit of the All-Star break. Look, there are 2 ways to attack this story, from the medical side and from the sports side. It would be unfair for me to attack this from the medical side. Do I have questions? The answer is yes. But I don't want to raise those questions if I don't have the answers to them. The reality is the coronavirus is something that mere mortals like me have to rely on experts for. At the end of the day, you have a right to be upset that this game was postponed. You have a right to disagree with the decision. But at the end of the day, there's nothing that you can do about it, okay? It happened. It's in the past. The Yankees and Red Sox are going to have to make it up at a later date. I'll say this, though. And I've said this in the past, if only one team is to blame for a COVID outbreak, count it as a forfeit. I know that we're not going to do that. We've never done that, but that should have been the rule. In any other scenario, if you can't field a team, that's a forfeit. Jacob, you're a Yankees fan. How can you say that the Yankees should forfeit this game? The reality is, I have very little confidence in this team. The big story around the Yankees yesterday, before news of the COVID outbreak broke, was that the Yankees and Red Sox were going to play each other 8 times in 11 days. If the Yankees win all those games, they tie the Red Sox, and they're right back in the thick of it. That was never going to happen. Never! One of my friends asked me yesterday, would I be okay with a split? I had to say yes. I understand that doesn't get the Yankees anywhere. A split doesn't help them. But they're not going to win this series. I understand that you want to have a glass half full perspective. You're trying to be optimistic. But I'd rather you be realistic. There is no way on this earth that the New York Yankees are going to make up any meaningful ground against the Boston Red Sox in the next 10 days. Let's say that they were at full strength, that they had Judge, and they had Urshela, and they had Loaisiga. How much ground do you really think the Yankees were going to make up? Let's say they won both series. Let's say they took 3 out of 4 in this 4-game series, and they took 3 out of 4 in the upcoming Fenway series. You know how many games back the Yankees would be? 4. That's still not good. So winning the series really isn't enough. You need a sweep in there, and there's no way that the Yankees are going to do it. With Judge and Urshela, that wasn't going to happen. Without them, forget about it. They're going to be lucky to win a damn game. The last game between the Yankees and Red Sox this month is set to be July 25th. It's a 1:10 start at Fenway that night. It would not surprise me at all if the Yankees were an under 500 team. This cockeyed optimism that Yankees fans have, I admire it. I wish I could have some, but it's unrealistic. Let's be real. The way the Yankees are currently constructed, they have no chance of making up any ground whatsoever. And here was the fallacy that people were running into with the Yankees and Red Sox, saying that if the Yankees were to sweep, they'd be tied for first. No, that's actually not true. There are 2 other teams in the mix. The Rays and the Blue Jays. The Yankees and Blue Jays have the same winning percentage. They're both 8 games back. So if the Blue Jays got hot and won 8 of their next 10, they'd still be tied with the Yankees. The Tampa Bay Rays, all they have to do is be good, and they're ahead of the Yankees. It was never going to happen. There's no way on this earth that the New York Yankees were ever going to catch the Boston Red Sox. Moreover, there was no way that after these games they were going to be in first place in the AL East. What, you think they're just going to flip a switch and all of a sudden be good? Torres is going to get his act together. Trey Ambergy is going to look like the second coming of Bernie Williams. DJ LeMahieu is going to find his power. The Yankees' rotation would round into form. No! There are too many variables. Too many things need to go right. The Yankees dug themselves too deep a hole. If this outbreak never happened, the Yankees would still be on the outside looking in terms of the playoff picture. With this outbreak, no Judge, no Urshela, no Higashioka, no Loaisaga, no Cortez, and no Peralta. Forget about it. If the Yankees' playoff chances were .1 before this outbreak, they're now at 0. You cannot survive this if you are the Yankees. Like I said, it wouldn't surprise me if the Yankees finished up the Red Sox series at Fenway under 500. If you thought the lineups that the Yankees were putting out before the All-Star break were bad, this lineup that you're going to see coming up is going to be dreadful. It may be a legitimate AAA lineup. Garrett Cole can't start every game. I got news for you. You know what this could be? In all honesty, this could be the baseball god's way of saying to Brian Cashman, forget about trying to make the playoffs this year. It's not gonna happen. If you wanted to be optimistic before this outbreak, okay. But there's no way that you can be optimistic after the outbreak. There's no way that you can look at this Yankees roster without 3 of their best players, Judge, Urshela, and Loaisaga, and say that they're going to make a playoff push. These 2 weeks before the trade deadline were important. If by some miracle the Yankees had swept the Red Sox, or they had taken 3 out of 4 in both sets, or swept the Red Sox here and took 3 out of 4 in Fenway, okay. You could get me to say that the Yankees should make some big moves. Now? No way. No freaking way. Lick your wounds, sell off whatever pieces you can, and try again next year. At this very moment, the Yankees have very few untouchables. LeMahieu, even though he has no power, I'd still classify as untouchable. Judge is obviously untouchable. Urshela is obviously untouchable. Stanton may be untouchable. Voit may be untouchable. Cole's definitely untouchable. If you want to throw Torres in there, you can. Everyone else, sell them off to the highest bidder. You want to package guys together to get better prospects? I'm all for it. Forget about it. This season's over. It's done. What's the best that you can hope for with this roster going up against the Red Sox? A win Sunday and a split in the Fenway set. That means you've gone 3-4. You can't tell me that the Yankees will do any better than that. There's no way that they finish with a winning record in these upcoming games against the Red Sox. No way. The best you can hope for is 3 out of 4. I just told you the formula. The Yankees make up no ground there. The playoff dream is dead. The reality is, it was 6 feet under before this outbreak. But now, we've dug a 60-foot hole, put the body in, and then poured tons and tons of concrete over it. There's no way around it. The Yankees' playoff hopes are dead and gone. I mean, to be honest with you, that's not even the nightmare scenario for me. I had resigned myself to the Yankees not making the playoffs a while ago. The nightmare scenario for me is the Yankees not making the playoffs and Hal Steinbrenner announcing that Aaron Boone and or Brian Cashman will return for 2022. We have heard nothing that definitively said that if the Yankees miss the playoffs, Steinbrenner's going to clean house. We're just assuming that. You've got Hal Steinbrenner saying that he's not his father. Well, if we're to take that to its logical conclusion, that means that he doesn't want to make a move. That he wants to give the Cashman and Boone duo another year. I'll be honest, that terrifies me more than Brian Cashman going all in on this lost season. The worst thing that Cashman could do would be to trade his top prospects for guys like Joey Gallo, Trevor Story, and Ketel Marte. You want to sign some guys in free agency? You want to try it again at the winter meetings? I'm okay with that. But in 2 weeks, I don't want to see the Yankees trade for anyone. I want to see the Yankees trade people, be sellers. What's more terrifying to me than the Yankees being buyers is the thought of seeing Cashman and Boone back next year. Because it's going to be the same thing. Another year of forget a World Series, not even getting there. No pennant, no ring, no parade down the Canyon of Heroes. With Brian Cashman and Aaron Boone running the Yankees are doomed to lose. I hope that Hal Steinbrenner realizes that. I'm okay with letting them finish out the season. Firing Cashman now makes no sense. He's the one who's been working on potential deals. It's too late to bring someone else in to navigate the trade deadline. And firing Boone really doesn't change anything. It doesn't make the Yankees a playoff threat. Also, if Steinbrenner didn't fire Boone before the All-Star break, he's not going to do it after the All-Star break. The issue with the Yankees isn't just one person. It's systemic. It's an over-reliance on analytics. It's an over-reliance on trying to hit home runs and not understanding fundamental baseball. Not moving runners over, not understanding that a single can sometimes be more valuable than a home run. Let me ask you something. Runner on third, 1 out. What would you rather have? A fly ball that scores the runner from third? Or a single that drives the runner in from third? I'd rather have the single. The Yankees keep trying to hit home runs. They're so obsessed with their launch angles that they end up hitting fly balls. Or even worse, shallow pop-ups. To me, launch angle is just an interesting anecdote. It's fun to see, but it's not the be-all, end-all. What the Yankees need is a cleansing from the top down. A new GM, Theo Epstein, would be perfect. He knows how to win with big payrolls. Obviously, he brings a modern approach to baseball also. He's excellent at blending the old with the new. But if he's unavailable, I think Bill Ripken would make perfect sense. I've said this before. in his book, State of Play, that I interviewed him about, his philosophy to building a team made perfect sense to me. I understand the hesitancy that you'd have towards hiring a guy to be your GM who's never worked in a front office before, but we've seen that in other sports. Granted, with varying degrees of success, but Ripken just strikes me as a really smart guy. I think he'd work out perfectly, and the next manager needs to be John Farrell. Here's a guy who won a World Series with the Red Sox, led them to back-to-back AL East titles, the first time that's ever happened in the history of the Red Sox. He's on the younger side, he's 58, he's from New Jersey. I really think Farrell could work out. Maybe Paul Molitor, but I think Farrell's a better option. There's no hope for the Yankees this year. This COVID outbreak killed any hope that they had. And even then, their playoff hopes were slim to none. The only thing that we can look forward to as Yankees fans is to see what prospects we get at the trade deadline. Let's see if the Yankees can get another Torres, who I'm not ready to give up on. If someone blew me away, I'd be open to it, but I'm okay with sticking with Torres. I like Torres. Let's see if we could get a prospect as highly regarded as Clint Frazier was, as Justice Sheffield was, as Dylan Tate was. Once you get past that, hope that the Yankees can continue their streak of finishing over 500. They haven't finished with an under 500 record since 1992. The playoff hopes are dead and gone, like I said, but the hopes of a winning record are very much alive. It'll actually be kind of exciting, because it'll be close. It's pathetic that that's what we have to look forward to, staying over 500, the definition of mediocrity. But I could see a scenario where the Yankees close out the season like 81-80, the 162nd game. They've got a bunch of fans there, and they're going crazy because they want the Yankees to finish over 500. Don't finish at 500. Again, it's pathetic that the Yankees, the most successful franchise in sports history, could be reduced to that. You want to tell me that if the Yankees make big trades for guys like Gallo, Story, Marte, etc., that it vaults the Yankees into playoff contention? No, it doesn't. The hole that they've dug for themselves is too big. 8 games behind the Red Sox, 4.5 games behind the Athletics. There are too many teams around them. And let's say you're right. Let's say that the Yankees do sneak into the playoffs. And let's say that they beat the Rays in the wild card game. They're not making it past the White Sox. They're not making it past the Red Sox. They're not making it past the Astros. The worst thing that Brian Cashman could do would be to double down on a lost season. It's done. The die has been cast. The season is over. As pathetic as it sounds, I'm going to look forward to seeing what prospects the Yankees get in 2 weeks and seeing if the Yankees can finish over 500. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. There was another piece of MLB news, and you can be forgiven if you missed it because of what happened with the Yankees, but Jock Peterson was traded from the Cubs to the Braves for Bryce Ball. And I know why the Braves did this. Obviously, their outfield is really banged up right now. Ronald Acuna's out for the year. Marcell Ozuna's hurt. The Braves aren't out of the playoff race. It doesn't look good for them. But they're only 4 games behind the Mets. They just have to be better than the Phillies and Mets. That's not impossible. The thing is, though, you're not going to be able to replace Acuna. An injury to a guy like Acuna is so severe that it knocks you out of the playoff hunt. Okay? If a guy like him is out for the year, forget about it. I don't care who you trade for. You're not going to be able to replace his production. I mean, there's a reason that we've heard Freddie Freeman trade rumors pop up recently. Freeman's a free agent. With the Acuna injury, there's really no chance that the Braves make a ton of noise in the postseason. So I have a golden opportunity here to get a king's ransom for the reigning and defending National League MVP. I have no idea how extension talks have gone. I don't know if there have been any. If the Braves and Freeman are ridiculously far apart on value, and it's clear that there's no chance that Freeman is going to be a Brave next year, you can get something for him rather than see him leave for just a compensatory draft pick. With Acuna healthy, you can't trade Freeman. You can't tell me that if negotiations weren't going well for the Braves, and again, I don't know if they were or if they weren't, but for argument's sake, if they weren't, you can't tell me that it wouldn't be better for the Braves to trade Freeman now. With Acuna healthy, you can't do that because you have a chance to overtake the Phillies and Mets. Without Acuna, you really don't have that chance. Now, the flip side to that coin is, if there haven't been any negotiations, or negotiations are going well, it just hasn't been finalized yet, and there's a solid chance that Freeman could be a Brave next year, don't trade him. Okay? I get that. I get that 100%. Again, I don't know how the dialogue has been between Freddie Freeman and the Atlanta Braves. I don't know if it's been good. I don't know if it's been bad. I don't know if it's been non-existent. If both parties decided, you know what, we're just going to wait until after the season. We don't want this to be a distraction. But I think adding someone like Peterson to try to salvage an already lost season isn't going to work for the Braves. Peterson really isn't that great. He'll hit 20 home runs, but he'll give you no average whatsoever. He's perfect for the modern game, but you know what? In my opinion, you've got to do better than a 230 batting average. You've got to do better than a 300 on base percentage. I don't care if you hit 20 home runs. I don't care if you have 60 RBIs. You've got to do more than that. I'm not the biggest Jock Peterson fan in the world. There's a role for him in the league. He's not a terrible player, But to think that he's going to help you overcome the Acuna injury, that's not going to happen. As for the prospect that the Braves gave up, Bryce Ball, he is not having a good year for the Rome Braves, the high A affiliate for the Braves. He's hitting just .207, only 6 home runs. That's scary. The reason is, the only way that he's going to make it in the majors is with his bat. He is not a good fielder. He does not have good speed. He does not have a good arm. In a perfect world, he's a DH. So the fact that he's taken this big step back is terrifying to me. Is it possible that he could turn his career around in the Cubs organization? The answer is yes. Lord knows the Cubs have a history of developing their prospects correctly. But I'm not as high on Ball as I was before the season started. All in all, I understand the logic as to why the Braves did this. They're trying to salvage a season that isn't totally unsalvageable. The outlook isn't good, but it's not impossible that they can make the playoffs. They gave up a prospect that it's very possible doesn't turn into anything. He is not having a good year this year. Can he bounce back? The answer is yes, but I am skeptical. I just wonder if this was the best course of action for the Braves. Depending on what's going on with Freddie Freeman, it's impossible for me to say one way or the other. If he's going to be a Brave next year, this move makes sense, because Peterson can be a Brave next year. He has a mutual option. If he's not going to be a Brave next year, you had a golden opportunity to trade him. The season's pretty far gone anyway. It may have been the better move to just punt this season. But as of right now, I'll say that this is an even trade. Alright, now I'll give you some NFL Valk talk. The big story there is that the franchise tag deadline was yesterday. Only one player signed an extension, but it is a huge one. Taylor Moton signed a 4-year extension with the Panthers worth $72 million. That's $18 million a year. He has $43 million in guaranteed money coming to him. He's now in the top 2 or 3 of every contract measurable in the NFL for right tackles, and he deserves it. Moton has gotten better and better every year that he's been in the NFL. Came from a small school, Western Michigan. Didn't play a lot his rookie year. Then his sophomore year, he was named the starting right tackle. And it's been full speed ahead from there. He is one of the best right tackles in the NFL. Incredibly underrated. According to Pro Football Focus, last year, he had an 81.6 overall grade. He's young, too. He's going to turn 27 next month. So let me ask you something. There are the people saying that it's a good thing that the Jets didn't sign Marcus May to an extension. You don't want to sign Taylor Moton to an extension? After all, Moton's going to be 31 at the end of this contract. You know who's really happy? Sam Darnold. It's not going to do him a lot of good. He's not a good quarterback. But he has his great right tackle locked up long term. If he's going to be with the Panthers long term, He'll have someone great protecting his right side for the next 4 years. Great move for the Panthers. It makes perfect sense. No excuses for Darnold now. He's got to show this year that he can be a good NFL quarterback. I don't think he can be. Alright, now I'll give you some NHL Valk talk. That, of course, is Ryan Graves being traded by the Avalanche to the Devils for Mikhail Maltsev and the Islanders' second rounder this year that the Devils had because of the Andy Green trade. This move makes sense for the Avalanche. They're in a bad cap situation. And they were in a bad situation in terms of the expansion draft. Think about their top 4 defensemen that were eligible for the expansion draft. Cale Makar, Sam Girard, Devon Taves, and Ryan Graves. Graves is the odd man out there, but he's a good player. And in terms of cap hell, the Avalanche have some big players that they need to re-sign. They've got to re-sign Gabriel Landeskog. They've got to re-sign Tyson Jost. They've got to re-sign Cale Makar. They've got to re-sign Philip Grubauer. Joe Sakic has his work cut out for him. Graves is set to count for over $3 million against the cap for the next 2 years. He's the odd man out. If you can get rid of him, do it. He's a good player. He led the NHL in plus minus 2 years ago with a plus 40. Last year he had 15 points in 54 games. He was a plus 15. In this past playoffs, he had 6 points in 10 games. He's a good player. You don't want to lose him for nothing. So if you can get a second round pick and a player with a solid future in Maltsev, I don't mind that. Maltsev had 9 points in 33 games last year for the Devils. I think the smart money is on him working out. I mean, truthfully, I'm going to give the Avalanche the edge here. This trade doesn't make a lot of sense for the Devils. They got older. They gave up a second-round draft pick. Could they have stood to improve their D-man core? The answer is yes. But that's what free agency's for. You don't need to give up 2 young assets for a guy like Graves. That doesn't make the Devils a lot better. I know it's early, but I don't see them making the playoffs next year. The Devils got a good player. I just don't like the assets that they gave up for him. The Avalanche couldn't keep Graves. They got 2 pretty good assets for him. They win this trade. I'll close this show out with some breaking NBA news. The play-in tournament will be back for next year. Presumably in the same format that it was in last year. I know that the NBA loved the play-in tournament. It did what they wanted it to do. You had less teams tanking. You had competitive basketball all the way to the end. The thing is, though, I do think it needs to be revised. I don't like the fact that the Spurs were in it. They didn't deserve it in no way, shape, or form. Were they as good as the Grizzlies? I feel like there needs to be a minimum trigger for the play-in tournament. If you're X number of games out, there's an abbreviated play-in tournament. Maybe there's just a play-in for the 7 seed. Maybe there's just a play-in for the 8 seed. Maybe there's no play-in tournament at all. I didn't mind the play-in tournament. For the Eastern Conference, it made perfect sense. But for the Western Conference, I didn't like it. I think it does need to be revised, but all in all, the play-in tournament was a success. I don't have a problem with this being a thing that the NBA keeps permanently. New York Yankees show comes your way Monday night. This coming Thursday, it'll be 7 days before the 2021 NBA draft. I'm going to reach out to Nick to see if he can do another joint mock draft. I hope he can. I see no reason why he wouldn't do it. But if by some fluke he can't, that whole show will be my full NBA mock draft. One way or another, you're going to get a mock draft for all 60 picks on Thursday. Until next time, I am Jacob Valk saying that putting lights in Wrigley Field was like putting aluminum siding on the Sistine Chapel.